can do that because I'm the one who wanted to bring Josh in for this specific topic. Obviously, I mentioned Josh as one of these thought leaders that I have been following for a long time back in the past session when we were talking about who has like a great LinkedIn presence, great company presence, provides value as a thought leader, that kind of thing. So just pumping your tires here, Josh. So I've been following
you call
Josh
me
for
every
a long
morning
time.
and just say that. Like that would be great if I could just have that like a loop. I'll just have positive words of affirmation in the morning. Awesome. You're the best.
So yeah, I've been wanting to have Josh in kind of like a webinar or a live stream format for a long time to talk about some of his expertise. And as he actually mentioned, just when he was chatting about the last question there, he dissects a lot of like emails, cold calls, that kind of thing each day on LinkedIn. So those were things that I was seeing each day. And there were some patterns that I saw emerge from the types of things that he was like pointing out or suggesting when breaking down emails. So I kind of recognize those things to be really centered around the psychological aspect of prospecting rather than just like the pure data or the pure numbers game. So that was what I really wanted to talk to Josh about today. Some of the things, of course, there are many, many themes that emerged, but these are the ones that I wanted to touch on today. So illuminating the problem. So not, you don't create a problem, that person already has it, but you illuminate it. So we'll go into that a little bit. How to pique somebody's interest with a first email outreach, cutting the fluff from your outreach, avoiding yes, or in other words, going for no. And finally, handling some of the really infamous objections, like a pro. So the I'm already covered, got it, thanks, or the no thank you, or just the plain old thank you. So we've got some examples here on some slides that I've pulled from Josh's posts. But I'd also love if you guys in the chat could just give us your initial emails. Send them. You can either comment a screenshot in the chat. You can send it over to veronica@predictablerevenue.com. We'll see them if you do that. So please send us your initial emails and we're going to do a live audit and leverage Josh's expertise here on those things.
I'm going to be more like a Simon Cowell or like a Paula Abdul. Like, where do you want? Like, you want me to ratchet it up or like stay in the middle? Like, what's your?
I think you could sit right at Randy.
No, I don't know.
I think if you sit at Randy, because you can be like, it's good if it's good, but if it's bad, you just slide it right along. It's going to be a no from me.
And if I'm like Randy, I can say that's a bit pitchy, dog. A little bit pitchy, a little pitchy.
Exactly. That's brilliant.
Okay,
cool. I'm going to pull up these slides. We obviously don't have to stick to them time-wise or anything. They're just kind of like visual prompts for our audience here to be able to see what we're talking about, show some of those examples that I mentioned that I've pulled from your LinkedIn posts. So I'm going to share my screen here so that we can have a little visual aid. But the very first thing that we are going to be talking about is this idea around problems. So how to not ask about problems, but illuminate them.
Yeah, I think it's let me just tell a story because I think it's going to really illustrate it. A couple years ago, I was in the mall with my wife. I didn't need anything. She was shopping for some stuff. I just was going to kill some time. So I'm literally walking around the mall and I pass a fit to run store, like an athletic store. And I just walked in. So Sarah, let me ask you, if I was just not needing anything, I'm just killing time, I walk into this store, and if the sales associate said to me, "What brings you in today?" What do you think I would have said?
Shoes.
Well, let me tell a story again. So I don't need anything. I'm killing some time.
I'm just looking browsing. At shoes. Yeah.
I'm just, I probably would have said something like, I'm just browsing.
Sure.
Like whenever you walk into a store, it's like, I'm good. Mm-hmm. If she would have said, "Do you have any problems?" What do you think I would have said?
No.
Oh, I'm good. She didn't say any of those things. Instead, she looked down at my sneakers. She said, "Are you a runner?" I said, "Yes." She said, "What distance?" I said, "Well, I'm training for a marathon." And then she said, "Have you ever had a running gait test?" And I said, "What's that?" And then moments later, and I can share a picture of this, I'm on a treadmill in the store. And she's recording me. And she shows me a still of the treadmill and my feet. And she says, "Are you aware that your feet are pronated?" And I go, "Yeah, I could see that." And she goes, "And if you run in sneakers that are not made for pronated feet, you can get injured on long distance runs. And if you'd like, we could check your sneakers to see if they're made for pronated feet." Now, as an old Jewish man, I'm petrified of getting injured on long distance runs. And a few minutes later, I ended up buying $150 insoles and all kinds of stuff. So the moral of the story is she didn't ask about a problem. She illuminated one. And that is a magic skill because people are running in their sneakers when you reach out to them. Nobody is sitting around doing nothing. They're all solving the problem today. And so what I see in these emails or these value propositions, we do it, we help runners optimize their runs. I'm like, I'm already running optimized. Like I'm already doing this. I'm thinking to myself, like, why do I need to change? There's no really compelling reason. The problem has to be also big and intense. What I mean by that is I live with problems all the time. I mean, right now I have a TV in my back bedroom that has a pixel out on it, but I rarely watch that TV. And when I do, I barely notice the pixel. It's a problem, but it's not intense and frequent. And because I have limited resources, so do your prospects, it's just not going to get my attention. So illuminating a problem that's big and expensive, you have to really understand at a very crispy or specific level how they're getting it done today. And notice when I was telling that story, Sarah, you probably were able to visualize that in a movie in your head. Like you probably saw it. You have to describe it like that when you talk to me. If we were doing an email workshop right now, I'd say, give me the black and white version of the infomercial so I can actually observe it and see it. And what I often hear is this: well, we help people optimize and increase. I go, I can't see that. Like, what does that mean? I can't look at it. I can't see it. It's not specific. And then more importantly, it's not the words your customers would use and say. Shin splints, runner's knee, Frankenstein walk. Like those are like, that's the language and the lingo of how runners talk. And so we have to get very crispy on that black and white version and have that insight, that perspective that we're shining a light on before we can actually write the question. So the best way I know how to get that is to just, if you're a new SDR, just look at the case studies. Just start reading every case study as a before and an after and start to understand what was that change people were looking for they didn't know about.
So how do you think you would write the kind of messaging in an initial email to basically compete with the existing solution?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do in this question that I'm going to formulate, these illumination questions, is I'm trying to get people to read them and think, I'm not sure. Like, what do you mean? So with the case of the running one, I might say, what are you doing to ensure that you don't get injured on long distance runs? That's going to make me just scratch my head for a second and go, I'm going to read the next sentence. And the next sentence is going to sound something like, runners training for a marathon in their 50s are using our insoles to stay in alignment so they don't get sidelined due to overpronated feet. Want to learn how they're doing it? That's kind of the idea there. And then if you really wanted to amp it up another notch, and I teach this actually last because it's the icing on the cake, is we might want to put a first line in there if we can lift something from their profile, something to the effect of, hey, Josh, saw that you're doing Miami Marathon. Curious, what are you doing to ensure? But I don't teach that first because people really geek out on the personalization stuff. And really the core of it isn't that. It's going to make someone feel good. But the real core of it is, what is it that I don't know that can hurt me? And getting injured on a long distance run, anything I can do to protect that, to mitigate that risk, I'm going to be interested in.
Awesome. So for thinking about your kind of initial template there, the piece one being the personalization, the piece two being the question, illuminating the problem. Piece three is almost your standard value prop. And maybe what a big problem is that most people are leading with that. They're sort of inverting your template.
Yeah. Part three is using a similar customer and describing the result that they achieved. And this is another area where I see people kind of coming off the rails a little bit. Nobody cares about what your product does. They care about what your product can do for them. Those two things sound very similar, but they're very different approaches. People don't want to be a camera expert. They want to take better pictures of their family so they can get more likes on Facebook. I don't want braces. What do I want, Sarah? I want
straight teeth.
Straight teeth so I can feel more confident maybe when I go out, right? So The second sentence is similar company. So this is another area where people kind of come off the rails. I was working with a company that had Walmart as a customer, and they would use it in every second sentence. Well, guess what? Not every company can relate to Walmart. In fact, it's actually a negative for a lot of companies to be compared to Walmart. So the second sentence, again, the way you do this is you look at the case study. This is a company that is they're in fintech. They are this kind of title. I'm going to go now send it to another person in fintech with this kind of title. So it's got to be similar. So similar company is using a lesser known or an unconventional. These are words that are going to pique a little curiosity approach to ensure they're not getting injured on long distance runs due to pronation. And then you can use another word that I love to use, without. The word without is a really magical copywriting word, because it's going to be without the terrible thing I'm doing today, without spending 15 hours a week training. So if you're training for a Ironman, typically you're spending 15 or 20 hours a week training. And so if you have something that can do the same job in 7 or 8 hours, that's going to make me scratch my head. Gee, how are they getting that job done without spending 20 hours? Like, what is this? I better look into it. But again, it all starts with understanding why you're meaningfully different. And then the fourth sentence or third sentence, even if leave out the personalization if you can't find it, the fourth sentence really is very simple, which is not asking for time, but to gauge interest first. And so I like to use words like, thought you'd be interested. Sound interesting? Would you like to learn how? Referencing how the other company's doing it. Mm-hmm. And then you can, if you want to, again, it's kind of icing on the cake. You can put some funny little line at the end. I call it ending on a high note. It can be very effective if it's done well. What I'll do is I'll kind of Google like memes for industry or memes for persona. So if you Googled like funny things for triathletes, there was one that I saw that said, remember, pain is temporary, but the Instagram photo lasts a lifetime. So I might put at the end, regardless, rock that run. Or regardless, pain is temporary, but the Instagram photo lasts a lifetime. And again, it's one paragraph. It looks like I'm holding my hands up. I don't know if you guys are seeing this or you're listening to it, but it looks like a text. Mm-hmm. And it's like this. If you can find the personalization, great. Don't have to have it. If you're crispy, it's going to resonate. And you don't have to have the last line. Those are kind of things you can sort of play with. But the core of it is where you should be focusing your time.
Awesome. We're going to get into some of those specifics in a sec here, but I have one question around when you're looking for that similar company that you reference in that value prop piece, where do you suggest people find that?
Yeah. So whenever if I'm a brand new SDR, if I'm just starting out or I'm new to any industry, I think to myself, marketing spent a bunch of money. And the most valuable thing to me is not what marketing is writing, but these case studies and these customer testimonial videos. I want to hear how the customers are describing it and what kind of company they're working for. So if I'm looking at that kind of company and that kind of person, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find a company that's leveling up from them. So for instance, if I'm, Amazon, maybe Amazon wants to know, or maybe CBRE wants to know what Amazon is doing. Like if I'm a triathlete and I'm an amateur, I kind of want to know what people in my age are doing that are finishing in like the top 10%. So you don't have to have something equal. You might want to have one that's like a smidge, like above, like aspirational. You're kind of looking for the aspirational companies. These guys that are kind of like you, but maybe like a little bit bigger, are using us to Z without having to.
Nice. Okay, awesome. Well, let's get on to, okay. So we talked about just at the end there, you put your fingers up like this. It's like an inch of text, I guess, depending on what you're looking at. And Colin, I want to make sure that at any point you can jump in with people's questions. I'm paying more attention to this and Josh, and I might lose some. So please jump in if we have any questions or if those emails come up for us to live audit. But let's talk more about this idea of being informal, being casual, and writing these short emails that feel like a text. And the kind of example or steps here is something that I've pulled from one of your LinkedIn posts.
I'm kind of blown away by the preparation, ladies and gentlemen, of this Sarah Hicks. I mean, you see what's going on here? These are not my slides. I'm seeing these slides. This is, I need to hang out with Sarah more. She's making me look honestly, so good.
I have to.
So codified.
I have to thank the marketing team for this. I pulled the text, but honestly, they're the ones who made it beautiful. So thank you to those guys.
God. Yeah. So again, so it starts with what we talked about. We go through this exercise. We go through this jobs to be done exercise. Who is it? What's the job? What's the current way? Why does it suck so bad? What's the better way? Why is it meaningfully different? I want to talk about that just a little bit more because a lot of people have a hard time with it. This idea of meaningfully different. One more quick little side note. I was driving on the road several months ago and I saw a U-Haul, the back of a U-Haul. And on the back, it said our loading ramp and then the other guys. And their loading ramp was really low and the other competitors were high. And it was just visual. And it was like, wow, that's a really good differentiator because if your loading ramp is low and goes to the ground, again, if you're old like me, you don't want to get injured rolling the dresser up to the, let's be honest, guys, a guy like me with my success, I'm not moving my own furniture, but I'm just using this as an example. Okay. So you're pushing the dresser up the thing, you're going to get injured less. So you can actually represent your differentiation with a visual. So I just did this for Connect and Sell, Kevin Dorsey, right? So Kevin Dorsey over at Patient Pop, his SDRs sell to dentists. And if you know anything about Connect and Sell, the big problem that SDR organizations have is they'll make a lot of phone calls, but maybe they'll call for an hour, maybe they'll talk to one or two people. Mm-hmm. With Connect and Sell, you talk to a dentist every 4 to 6 minutes. So I literally created a little dots. And every 6th dot, I put a little picture of a tooth to represent a dentist. And the graph said, conversations with dentists. Every dot was a minute and the teeth was conversation. So they'd see like every 5 or 6 minutes, they'd have a conversation. I was able to visualize, just like the U-Haul example, the differentiator, and the email was literally just that graphic. So you have to kind of really understand what's meaningfully different. And then you can actually start to craft, these emails, but you got to do the Mad Lib exercise first. People are really addicted, Sarah. Maybe you've experienced this too, to like, let me write the email. What's the template? How do I send out the sequence? What's touch 7? What's touch 9? You got to downshift a little bit here and really go through this exercise. And then you can craft very specific, crispy copy.
Awesome. I think we've got some examples here. Specifically that one that we've talked about, the running one at the top here, but then you did another one for Wistia. So this is like kind of pulling all these examples here. So like what the prospect wants to get done, how they're doing it, what sucks about how they're doing it, and what's better, and then kind of squishing that down into the one sentence. So yeah, maybe you can talk about how to do that for a couple of companies. And maybe this is a great time, actually, guys, in the chat, if you want to throw in your value prop, or even if you can kind of answer these questions here. So job they want to get done, job, how they're doing it already, what sucks and what's better. And we can ask Josh to finagle it into this strong textile.
Let's do this. Let's do this, Sarah. Let's actually do this for you.
Okay.
Let's do this like for your prospects, and we'll kind of walk through this exercise while we're waiting for people that maybe if they want to chime in. But good idea. Let's actually do like pull up somebody, or maybe you have someone in mind that you want to get in front of, like a specific person, because this is the other thing. Like I do this in the workshop. I'm like, this is not a persona. It's like a person. Like we got to pull the person up. Like literally, we got to pull them up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And we got to like do a little skim and scan. We got to say, okay, who's the person? Like, what's their title? Let's start with the title, Sarah.
Okay. I'm going to get into my LinkedIn so you can see. I'm going to pull up a prospect. Actually pull somebody up that I'm mid prospecting, and we can look at them. Okie dokie. Give me 2 seconds here, guys, so that I can get something relevant up for you to see. Okay. Okie doke. And I'm going to share again. Share screen. And okay. Can you guys see Caspian Alderman? Caspian, if you're watching, I hope that you're okay with this. I don't think he is. But
even better, Caspian, if you're here, if you could chime in and so book a meeting with Sarah, that would be even more awesome. That would be incredible.
I'll just do it live right here.
Yeah.
Cool. So to answer those questions that were on the slides. Oh man, no, I can't even remember. Step one was
what's his
problem?
title?
Okay. director of sales. That's the part that I'm interested in. The customer success here or there, but director of sales, I care about.
And what's his job?
His job is to generate revenue for his company.
Okay, so he's not doing that. Like he's doing something.
Yeah.
What is he doing today to do that?
Well, this is when I would do a little investigation here to see if he has any SDRs, or if he is doing the sales himself, or if he has account executives that are doing full cycle. So 21 people, odds are he doesn't have a big SDR team. I'm going to have a look here. And I'm going to do the little filter by business development so I can just narrow down my search. Okay, so looking through here, doesn't look like he has a dedicated outbound prospector. Maybe he's actually doing the closing himself, because it doesn't look like we've got an account executive or like a sales title other than him. So let's say he's one of the early people on this team. It's sort of like a founder-led selling or executive-led selling situation. So I'm going to say that he is either all the sales are coming in through inbound, or he's doing some prospecting himself.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Why does it suck?
It sucks because if it's the inbound situation, inbound is unpredictable. And if it's him doing the selling himself, he doesn't have time to be doing prospecting and closing meetings and all the other responsibilities he has as a director of sales.
And what terrible, no good, very bad thing happens when he doesn't have time?
When he doesn't have time, they don't generate more revenue because he has a feast or famine situation where he's stuck trying to close the old guys.
Okay. And when he has a feast or famine situation, that means there's like a unpredictability, and there's some quarters where he makes a good chunk of change, and there's other quarters where he's not making a really good chunk of change.
Exactly.
What about personally? Like we talk about the business impact, but there's always like a personal impact as well. I mean, when I was working for Alteryx, they help people, reduce a lot of manual spreadsheet work. And one of the things people would say was, I was able to get home at like 5 o'clock instead of like 7 o'clock. If you are taking care of your lawn and you're got a lot of weeds and it's brown, certainly the business benefit, it's green grass, but it's also like you'd be the envy of your neighbors. How does it feel for him when he doesn't have that predictable, or is he stressed out? Like, what's the underlying sort of emotion there?
Yeah, I guess the stress of not meeting the targets that are set for him by his senior leadership.
Bums him out.
Bums him out big time.
Bums him out.
Poor
and when he actually has, when he does have that flowing well, then what does it feel like?
Consistently hitting targets, budget is freeing up for all sorts of other things and more tools, and he's growing his sales org, and the company's growing, and things are flying. Okay.
So with that, let's go ahead and write, and then what's better? When he comes with you, he gets the predictability because you kind of take the reins, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll say in this context, we'll prospect on his behalf. So we'll book the meetings, we'll generate the opportunities, and all he has to do is focus on closing.
Okay. So he might be generating consistent business, but it's taking up a lot of his time that he could be spent doing something else. Let me ask you a question. Is this all he's doing? Because if we're going to come in there and say, we're going to do this, is he going to say, oh my God, am I going to lose my job?
Yeah, fair enough. It's not all he's doing. If he was an SDR, we'd say yes. Director of sales, he's got plenty of other things on his plate. Okay. Like what would if he had the free time, what would it allow him to do better? He would probably, if he is the one closing the deals, which we think he maybe is, it's to actually nurture existing pipeline, close the deals, talk to decision makers. And if he's just more of a kind of strategic director, it's to like work in tandem with marketing to get more leads in the door, that kind of thing. Okay, got it. Okay, so now what we can do, by the way, that was an awesome job, Sarah. You could tell Sarah's really dialed in to her persona. So now we can actually start to craft the email. And what we're going to do is we can take a quick skim, and I know Sarah's really well versed at this. She's going to make it look easy, to see if there's anything that we can see from his profile that maybe we can sort of amp up our outreach a little bit by using a first sentence. Now, here's the thing with the first sentence that you find about them. Notice the thing I did with Amanda and the wine. It wasn't just a random line.
it kind of tied into the next sentence. So, Amanda, unlike being an amateur wine connoisseur, SDRs can't smell the buttery aroma of a good inbound lead.
Mm-hmm.
BombBomb's using our tech to enable SDRs to sniff them out. See how it all kind of blends together? So is there anything that you're seeing in your cursory glance? And again, you might be able to find this, you might not. So we do have a fallback. I wouldn't spend more than 3 or 4 minutes kind of glancing around, and Sarah's going to probably make this look easy because she's been doing it for so long. This takes a little time. And Beck Holland talks about this. There's different places you can look. Are you kind of seeing anything?
Yeah, actually, luckily, there's something jumping out to me right here in his featured. He's hiring, and he's hiring a junior account executive to join the team. So he's looking for someone else to close deals. Looking at the rest of his LinkedIn, it seems like this is the first account executive that they're bringing on, which says to me that he's trying to grow his sales organization, which says to me that he needs consistency in order to keep that going. So that this is the first thing that jumps to me. It's not always as easy as something featured. I would say that usually I would have to go to the activity right here, click see all, and then do a bit of a scroll through what he's posting, what he's commenting on, that kind of activity. Maybe we'll see if something jumps up here because that was almost too easy. It's not usually featured like that. So yeah, I would go to activity. I'd go to posts. Let's see if he's posted anything that's like relevant. Well, he posted this. So maybe this is where I'd find that he's hiring. And I know he's trying to grow the sales organization, but let's see. Enterprise admin tools. No.
How far back do you go on this, by the way? Do you go back? Because I would imagine like you go back too far, it kind of decays and people can't really remember it, or?
Yeah, I do think that's the case. I think it depends on the frequency with which they post. Like if it was you, Josh, if I went a month back, that's like 200 posts back, not as many, but you know what I mean? It wouldn't make sense. But there are going to be some people who maybe only post once or twice a month, in which case they probably do remember something that happened a month back. I almost gauge it by like the length of scroll that I do. So I just like wouldn't scroll for too long because then I'm getting too far back. If I'm only doing like a few little flicks of the hand on my trackpad, then I'm probably within a good time frame.
Okay.
I think honestly, the best thing that I've seen though is that he's hiring. This is something, okay, they were hiring a year ago for customer success. So they've been growing for a while now. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the growing.
Okay, so now I'm going to see, we're going to coach Sarah. This is going to be interesting. So Sarah, what we're going to try to do here is link that first line into an illumination question. This is going to be a little tricky. So remember the illumination question, might sound something like, we can use an easy one for now or use a structure. What are you doing to ensure is a good way to start, or how would you know, how do you know is another good way to start. What are you doing to ensure you have a steady flow of new business conversations without spending your time getting them?
Yeah.
Like that would be a decent illumination question. But the question is, how can you finagle that a little bit and tie that into what you're observing here? I'm going to put Sarah on the spot. This is really difficult, Sarah.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't absolutely just bomb this. Okay. I'm going to say, so the personalization piece is, hey, I see that Whipster is hiring for a junior account executive to join the team in Portland. What are you doing to make sure that junior account executive's calendar is always full with great meetings?
Yeah. I mean, that's I like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So what Sarah did there pretty masterfully and on the spot was she asked a question where Caspian's probably going to think, well, I'm not sure. And I might even I think that's a really good question. Read that one more time.
Yeah. So personalization is, I see you're hiring for this junior account executive in Portland. Question is, what are you doing to make sure that account executive's calendar is always full of great meetings?
Without you having to spend your time.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Or without him having to do the prospecting.
Right. Without
them
you
having to do it.
Without is a key. The without word is really key because that's going to be like, well, I'm doing it. Well, I didn't even know there was an option for me not to do it. What do you mean without me doing it? Like, what is this black magic Sarah Hicks is talking about? And then the third sentence would be X, a similar company is using PR, predictable revenue to.
Yeah. I'm going to just take a quick peek at Whipster and what they do to make sure that I can say something relevant.
By the way, if you guys are thinking it's this easy, it is not this easy. We're talking to here someone that's a black belt email writer. While we are while Sarah's looking, I do want to give a hat tip to somebody. Called this out, and I do think it's a good hat tip. So first one is Beck Holland. We're talking a lot about personalization. She is really good at identifying all the places on LinkedIn that you can look to be able to find these hooks. But again, some industries I have found it's harder than others. If you can find it, great. Don't stress over it. The illumination question without that line still can be very effective. And then somebody else you should be taking a look at is Justin Michaels. He's doing a lot of great work with these short emails as well. And he's also does some interesting things with visual prospecting. I saw some of his work. He's doing some stuff with like Venn diagrams in emails, very easy ways to create visuals in emails to get attention. So check him out as well.
I'm doing a quick Google here because off the top of my head, I don't know any other video
we'll just
collaboration.
Say X for now. We'll say X for now. We'll say just for the purpose of this.
We can say
X is using
Zflow.
Yeah.
This top one. So yeah, Zflow is using predictable revenue to fill their pipeline with great opportunities or to generate more opportunities so they can hit their targets faster or hit their targets more predictably. Some version of those things, depending on the title.
Yeah. Zflow is generating a consistent flow of conversations without spending any of their time getting them. Want to learn how they're doing it? Like that's kind of the email. And so we'll just put it all together now, Sarah. We'll just say it all together because we just did this on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and string it all together.
Okay. Personalization was, hey, Caspian, I saw that Whipster is hiring for a junior account executive to join the Portland team. What are you doing to make sure that account executive's calendar is always full of great meetings? Zflow gets consistent pipeline and consistent conversations without having to prospect. Want to know how they do it?
There you go. Give it up, all six or all people in this meeting. Great job. Good job, Sarah. That was pretty impressive, I must say.
Thank you. Let me get our slide deck back up here. And maybe okay, awesome. So some templates have been added to the end of my slide deck by the wonderful team here. So we can, so we can hear from some other people. Anything else on the kind of writing an email to be concise, text-like, informal that you can share with us while I pull up the slides?
Yeah, a couple other things, a couple other tips. To get the language, to get the after language for that second sentence, and even the before sentence, even the illumination question, the best way to do that is literally if you go into the customer success stories or watch the videos, and they all pretty much follow the same format. There's like this before part and this after part, and you're going to hear this crispy language. And when I say crispy, I mean, it's very specific. And when it's more specific, it resonates more. Famous copywriting legend Robert Collier has this saying, sort of joining the conversation happening in your mind already. And when you're talking like people talk, not how you talk, but how triathletes talk, or like sales enablement people, like the exact language they're using, the next logical place the brain goes is, what do you have for me? Like, that's my life. Like, wow, you get me.
Nice. Okay. Got it back here. Do I? Yeah, right here. No, I don't. I've pulled up the wrong document. But anyway.
Is this the part where we improvise and tell jokes? Is this like the part in the telethon where we like...
Yeah, give us a joke. Where did I put my slides? Maybe somebody can Slack it to me who's listening. I've like opened them and then closed them into some
what's the next kind
tab.
of section? We can just talk through it. What's the next section you want to talk about? We can talk through it.
Okay, so the next section
You and I don't need slides, Sarah. You and I, we don't...
You're
slides,
right.
Come on.
You're right. I just like to see the examples. But okay, the next one we're going to talk about is piquing interest. So the kind of like words that you can use. How do you pique that interest in these initial emails?
Sarah, do you watch anything on Netflix? Are you addicted to any kind of series like I am? What's your jam?
Okay, something that I just watched that was so good is The Queen's Gambit.
Oh my God, was that insanity?
So good.
Wasn't it the best series? I mean, I can't remember a series I enjoyed more.
No, me neither.
Were you like me, and could you not stop watching? Did you binge it or did you spread it out over some time?
No, I watched like multiple episodes a day for a very short span and then it was done.
So this is what we're going to talk about. That series, and if you've ever watched it, great. If you haven't, maybe Stranger Things, they all work the same way, right? At the end, like the last 2 or 3 minutes, something happens that they don't tell you how it like ends. It's like a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're waiting for that timer to tick down to 5, and all of a sudden you're in a new show. And even during the show, they give you a little plot, and then they leave you hanging, and it kind of pulls you through the show. That's actually a psychological heuristic known as an open loop. Open loops create gaps in information between what you know and what you want to know. And brains crave closure. Copywriting legend, this guy Mel, way back in the day, they called these things fascinations. And one of the most famous ones was what never to eat on an airplane. So if you're about to get on an airplane, you're like, what shouldn't I eat? Like, it's open loop, right? The nightly news does this really well. Right? There's something wrong with your peas. News at 11. Like, wait, whoa! I'm about to eat peas. Like, what's wrong with my peas? I gotta find that out. So this open loop concept got me thinking a little bit about emails and even voicemail messages, which I don't know if we're going to get into on this call. But the idea here is, can we create that same curiosity and not give the whole story away? Notice in this email that we're writing, sometimes I might just write an illumination question, because what happens is the prospects will be like, who like in that email that I got from Adam's car wash polishes with the bucket, which we talked about in the last session. I didn't need a call to action. I'm like, what is this? I looked for myself to find out like what that was. So the idea here is, can you use some of these open loop principles to tell people only part of the story and not the whole story? So with regards to subject lines, we can start to play with some of these structures and start to, pique that same curiosity. Even in the emails, when we say, what are you doing to ensure your car wash mitt doesn't scratch your car? Like, that could be the whole email. Mm-hmm. And if that perks someone's ears up, they're going to kind of like, well, what is that? And they might start clicking around, so that's the kind of idea there. Yeah. With open loops.
Awesome. We've got another example here that is a kind of another running parallel here. But one of the examples that you shared, Josh, on your LinkedIn was about oxygen and a lack of oxygen, what that does to your body when you're running. And it's interesting here. You do the same thing with the open loop. At the end, you say slowing down or breathing in more oxygen doesn't solve the problem. You need to understand breathing mechanics, but you didn't give us the solution. You've just basically like opened up this whole can of worms that this person's like, I don't understand breathing mechanics.
Yeah, what is this thing? And probably in retrospect, after looking at this, I would probably cut out that last sentence. Like, I don't even need that. And that kind of speaks to another tip that I have is,
yes,
cut the fluff. Mm-hmm. Like, to the extent that you can go out and take out words that don't ruin the meaning. Stephen King wrote about this. Every time he writes a book, he spends, days going back, cutting the fluff, so he doesn't take out, that doesn't ruin the integrity of his book. But same thing with emails. Like, when we go back and we read emails, we take out like little words like ands. You don't really usually need them. There's usually a ton of words that you can cut out to make it even more curious.
Yeah, for sure.
So take the two copywriting formula for this that you can use is this sort of without. We talked a little bit about this before. I got this product. I don't know if have you heard of this product? My wife got this. It's called Athletic Greens. It's like a powder, green powder that you mix in water and you drink it, and it's got like 74 vegetables or some crazy thing on it. And their tagline that I saw for it was something like how to eat 74 vegetables without having to eat them. Like, without having to, right? So yes. We talked a little about this without having to, how to do this without having to do that, because everyone's getting it done today. Like, what do I not eat on a plane? How do I eat vegetables without eating vegetables? Like, how do I get this report done without spending 8 hours in Excel? So you got to understand again the difference, and then you can kind of use those to create little, as copywriters call them, little fascinations, little cliffhangers.
Awesome. I want to get to the idea of avoiding yes, because I think that's a really interesting one. It's a super psychological one that kind of originates, correct me if I'm wrong, from Chris Voss and kind of the never split the difference, those kind of ideas that he shared there. So tell me about basically what this means and why you should be avoiding yes.
Yeah. this kind of came on my radar first with this guy, Jim Camp. And then when I interviewed Chris Voss, he really, drugged the point. But I just ask you, like, if you've ever been in a mall back when you went to malls and you're walking around and a mall kiosk person locks eyes with you and says, "Can I ask you a question?" And you know that if you say yes, you're going to kind of go down this whole rabbit hole of being in a conversation with someone that's going to try to end in you buying some sea scrub that you probably don't want. Prospects know that salespeople are biased just by very definition of who they are, because salespeople are incented with money. And whenever you're incented with money, there's this weird dynamic. Salespeople have commission breath. Prospects know that. And so when a salesperson tries to get a prospect to say yes, oftentimes prospects can feel like you did when you were walking in the mall. Mm-hmm. Yes feels, as Chris Voss says, like you're being led into a yes trap. And salespeople, again, Chris Voss says they're sort of yes addicted. We've been trained from the very beginning to get people to say yes. It turns out that saying no actually feels safer. So if I were to use language like, would it be a ridiculous idea to see if there are opportunities beyond what you have now for result that you want? Would it be a terrible idea? Would it be a horrible idea? Would you be opposed to? Would you be against? That language, especially if you deliver it in a calm way at the right part of the conversation, can sometimes feel a little less like I'm pushing you forward. It can feel a little bit less salesy and sort of diffuse the pressure.
Yeah, awesome. Totally makes sense. And something that I think we don't think about, because I think you think as an SDR or anybody that's doing prospecting or selling in B2B, that you kind of can't fall trap to the seemingly B2C problems. Like I can remember just kind of like coming into sales and thinking that you would basically just going for these like classic salesy things. I thought sales worked doing that kind of thing. And it's only once you like take a step back and think about it and put yourself in that prospect's shoes that you're like, oh wait, no, I would actually really hate that. So
have you ever felt that? Have you ever been in a situation where you felt that sort of pressure from a sales in any kind of way?
Absolutely. The thing that comes to mind, similar to your kiosk example, is being in Egypt in the markets in the Khan el Khalili, and I was there after Egypt had kind of like fallen off the map as a tourist destination. So these people working in the market needed the sales basically, and so there's already like the haggling culture, but it was even tripled, quadrupled, and it's that thing where you're like walking and somebody's like, "Hey, like you look so beautiful. Would you like, would you like silver? Do you think silver is pretty? Or like, isn't this a beautiful box? Or like whatever." And you're like, the minute that you say yes, that something you're going to just end up walking out with like 10 of their items. And so you're trying to be like,
you did in fact get 10, of course.
I did. I actually came home with like a whole bunch of jewelry that I have never worn.
Well, this is interesting though. This is we could talk a little about this because it's super interesting. Sometimes it's easier to say yes than to be the bearer of bad news. There's a heuristic.
But it doesn't mean you mean it.
That's exactly right, Sarah. And this is a really key principle, because what ends up happening sometimes on a cold call, this happens a lot, is someone will say yes because they don't feel comfortable saying no. It feels bad to be the bearer of bad news. They'll give you a false yes and then they won't show up because it's easier than that to just show up, right? I was just talking to my wife about this. She works at do you believe I cannot remember the name? Oh my God, if she was listening to this, she'd kill me. West Elm Furniture Store. I'm like, you don't listen to me. West Elm Furniture Store. And she was doing a drive for St. Jude's. And she goes, I did really well. Like I was getting all this money from St. Jude's. I'm like, here's the thing, because I have to ruin everything. How that's just what I do as a salesperson. I'm like, it's possible that they gave you the money, not because they wanted to donate to St. Jude's, but because it felt better than saying no. Mm-hmm. So this is a key thing. Like you say, well, why does that matter? It does kind of matter in sales, because salespeople hear these yeses on these cold calls. And I'm guilty of it too. Like we hear a yes and we're like, oh, great. But like, is it a real yes? Or is it like a fake yes just to get the jewelry and get out of Dodge because it's easier than just saying, no, I'll just give you the $2.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's the kind of equivalent to the cold call and the response of like, yeah, totally send me some stuff on that because that sounds super interesting and I'd love to read that email. Never open it.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to tackle here is like certain objections. I'm just hopping all over this slide deck because I've done a random order, but yes, so objection handling. So it's not one that I've got a slide for, but we just touched on obviously a really common one. People being like, totally, this is more of a cold call thing.
Yeah.
But even over email, people will be like, can you tell me how this works? Or like, how do you do that? Or what does pricing look like? And trying to just like get the complete picture from you so that they don't have to hop on that call.
Yeah. So I think we should back up a little bit and talk a little bit about intent first before we get into this, because I think it's really important. When your intent is to get something out of every conversation, I got to get a meeting, I got to get a progression, I got to get a response, got to send all these emails, I got to get this stuff, I got to make the dean's list, I got to do all these things. What ends up happening is when you don't get those things, you feel bad. And prospects also feel the pressure. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about is making a little bit of a shift. Instead of assuming that everybody wants the thing that you're selling when you're selling it, because most people aren't in market, is to just be a little indifferent to the outcome and detach from the outcome. And instead of making your goal to get the meeting, make your goal to just get to the truth behind every conversation or interaction you have with a prospect, which is one of two things. Yes, they're interested in sharing a bit more and continuing the conversation, or no, they're not at this time, and be okay with either of those responses rather than assuming it's always choice A. Mm-hmm. Because you can't really create the motivation. I mean, you said it really well earlier in the conversation, Sarah. It's like, if this problem isn't there and there's no motivation, there's nothing you're going to be able to say to make someone motivated. So you can't create the motivation. You can just align with it. And so when someone says to you, we got this covered, usually that's a symptom of a bigger problem, which is you've not done a good job on the cold call of explaining why you're meaningfully different. And so they're saying, I got that covered already. So I'll just give you like an example. If you're like, let's say you're a CFO, and one of the things CFOs hate more than anything is like overpaying for stuff. Like they can't stand it. It's like nails on a chalkboard to a CFO. And let's say this CFO is responsible for credit card processing. They have a big company and everyone's using credit cards. And they of course have a credit card processor. So if you go in and talk about your value proposition in your pitch on a cold call about your credit card processor doing X, Y, and Z, of course they're going to say, we've got that covered. So one way to preemptively address this in your cold call is to use different language, have the right intent. And you might say something like this at a certain point in your cold call. Might sound something like, hey, John, not sure this is a fit, but we're showing a different approach CFOs are using to ensure they're not overpaying for their credit card processing fees, even if they have a current processor. So I was hoping I could ask you a couple questions to see if this would even be relevant. Now, there's a lot wrapped up in there that I want to unpack it a little bit. Even if, like Sarah, why do you think I'm saying the word even if? What's your gut feeling on why I'm using that word? Even if they already have X, Y, and Z, why do you think I'm using that language?
Because they probably do have a solution already.
Yeah, so it's going to be very hard for them to say we already have a solution when I've kind of brought it up. So when I was working with Alteryx, one of the objections they would always get is we're using Tableau. And it turns out we don't have to get into this, but Alteryx complements it. So in our script, we would say, we're showing a new approach that analysts who are using Tableau are using to X, right? So the idea here is to preemptively address this. Kevin Dorsey makes this analogy. I don't remember this movie too well, but he talks about this movie 8 Mile, which I guess is an Eminem. You know this movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end of it, apparently there's some rap battle, And apparently Eminem proactively raps all of the negative things that the opposing rapper is going to say, kind of deflates it all out of him. And by the time the microphone gets to the other rapper, he doesn't have anything to say. It's the same idea here, is to kind of proactively address it. I mean, Chris Voss talks about this all the time. He calls these things accusation audits, which are bringing up the negative things that someone's probably thinking. I do this on cold calls all the time. Sarah, you're probably going to hate me because this is a cold call. Would you like to hang up, or can I ask you a quick question? That's the idea. But what we're doing is kind of proactively addressing it. So this thing that already have it covered, when I listen to these calls, one of the things I always think is, of course, people are going to say that because of what you're saying. If someone brings that up and you're behind the 8 ball, what I might say is, already covered. How's that going for you? Right. Rather than trying to overcome it, Chris Voss calls that a calibrated question. What we're doing is we're trying to enlist the help of the other person to solve and give us some more information. And you might stay in that dialogue a little bit by using, we haven't gotten into this, but mirrors and labels. I know we've spoken about this before, kind of repeating the last 3 words, being interested in what they're saying. At some point, they might then say to you, what do you guys like? They might start leaning forward a little bit, rather than what most people do is, well, we're not here to rip anything out. We just want to show you like what's new and what's different. And like, I don't want anything new and different. Like, what exactly are you talking? Like, what does new and different even mean? That sounds awful. Like, new is going to get me fired if it doesn't work. Got to rip all the thing out. It's a risk. So there's kind of 2 key concepts there. Am I rambling? I feel like I've been like.
No. It's great. It's great. This is why we have you on, to share all your expertise. And this is like the last little topic before we get into templates. So go for it. Okay. Yeah. That's the idea there is to really think about your message first and why you're different, proactively address it. And then if you're behind the 8 ball, don't resist the urge to overcome it, understand it through labels and mirrors. So labels, already have it covered. How's that going for you? Mm. Then they'll talk. Then you might say something like in the course of a conversation is, I'm not sure if this is a fit. But a CFO, this guy, Bob, the CFO at CBRE, which I know is similar to you guys, they just used us alongside of what they're currently using to be able to save 10% off their processing fees, but only if you're processing over 90K a month. Now, I'm doing a lot there. What I'm not trying to do is rip out what they're doing. This is another sort of key concept. When I sold for an agency, we would do this all the time. We'd be going up against big agencies like Digitas. These were agencies of record. I wasn't going to come in there and say, we're taking over all your business. I would say, hey, you guys already have Digitas. Let's talk about a little thing we could do on the side to complement, to work alongside, to complement, to augment, so that people don't feel like they have to switch away from anything. So this is, again, all this kind of psychology in here. If maybe you have a solution that could just like test alongside it for a while and see if it's going to work. That's just going to create such less pressure. Again, words like, I'm not sure this is a fit. Would it be a terrible idea to explore that? I might end like that. So altogether, hey, not sure it's a fit, but CFO, John up the street over at CBRE, he's using us alongside of his credit card processor. Actually saved about 15K. Would it be a terrible idea for you to explore what's going on over there, or am I way off base here? Like, that's kind of how I would say it after I got the prospect to talk a little bit more using labels and mirrors. Awesome. Let's do a little live audit here of some of the templates that we've had people share. To the end here, templates. Okay, here we go. This is from Lee. I'll read it aloud here for those of you if you're not looking at the screen. So, hey, first name. I went ahead and did a performance audit for companies' online presence. You guys are not ranking very high on Google. Your competitors are getting all the Google leads. We specialize in SEO, social media marketing, and lead generation for companies in the financial/accounting space. Does 2 business days from now at 10 a.m. work for a 10 to 15 minute call to go over this with you?
Okay. So Lee, I love the spirit of this, trying to start with something that you observed about the client about their business and then how you might be able to help. Here's the problem. I personally get about 40 of these emails that look exactly like this every week. Nobody cares about specializing in SEO. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. No one cares about what you do. They care about what you can do for them. I don't buy a bike. I buy the wind in my face. So they're probably using SEO. They're probably solving this job today already. What exactly are you going to do differently? Like, why should I believe you? Like, what exactly? I got someone doing SEO. I guess you're doing that too. I guess it doesn't work. What don't they know about SEO that you know? And stop calling it SEO, because I don't buy SEO, just like I don't buy braces, just like I don't want to be a camera expert. So, and then the last paragraph, not to be too harsh, but you're going to get a little further when you don't ask someone that you just met, you're going on a date the first time, if you can meet their parents. It's a little awkward. I mean, the date would have to be phenomenal. I've never experienced it personally. Sarah, have you ever? I don't think so. No, probably not, right? Like it would be awkward if someone asked to meet Sarah's parents on the first date, or my parents. So this is kind of the equivalent of that. So instead, just gauge interest first. With a softer CTA, you don't even need a CTA really. Some of the emails we were writing earlier didn't even need CTAs, but you could say something like, thought you might be interested. Sound interesting. Generally speaking, does this sound interesting? Is this of interest? Just to test to see if it's interesting rather than sort of going for the jugular there.
Next one.
What do you think, Sarah? Did I miss anything on that one?
No, I think you're totally right. Yeah, you're kind of following the template that we talked about here with that like personalization piece, and then the kind of you're missing that kind of illuminating question, but then going on to the value prop-esque piece, and then of course the CTA. Definitely on the CTA point, we've seen a lot more success in the soft ask, which is things like, "Is this interesting? Would you want to chat about that?" That kind of thing, rather than the asking for a meeting. And then that value prop. Oh my goodness, my puppy is barking. And then the value prop being more around what you can do for that person rather than what you do as a company. But yeah, I think Josh, you nailed it. And okay, let's see. Who's next? Did I go to the right one? Oh my goodness, where am I going? Yeah, okay. Edward Sanchez. So quick note, Tomato.
Your dog's name is Tomato?
Yeah. Tomato, stop it.
That's got to be a good story for another day.
Life.
How you named your dog.
Yeah. This is the work from home life, though. At least everyone's in the same circumstances, and don't think I'm like super unprofessional. So note from Edward, he said, quick note about the email. It may not be the best example as it's not a prospecting email or a cold call type of email. I would be interested in hearing how Josh would approach highlighting a problem that moving company owners might need to address.
Oh, good.
So it actually seems like it's a response to a inbound query. So it's, thank you once again for your interest in Smart Moving CRM. As I mentioned in my message, I'll be your initial point of contact at Smart Moving. To set up your demo, please feel free to give me a call at your convenience. We would like to take just a couple of minutes to better understand your needs. Thanks again, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Okay, this is great. I think I just wrote about this 2 days ago. People don't want to see a demo. So this does not look like a cliffhanger to me. This is not like Queen's Gambit. What I mean by that is there's nothing in here that's going to entice me to tune in. Like a demo doesn't have really any inherent value. So let me just give you a couple of examples here. One that I write for my business is it might say something like, at precisely 3 p.m. tomorrow, you're going to see a lesser known approach SDRs are meeting to get higher cold email response rates. Since you sell to demand generation experts, we're going to show you what it looks like for them. See you tomorrow. P.S. Is there anybody else you'd like to join? Of course, they'll have to pass through security first. So what that is an example of what is this lesser known approach that teams like me are doing to achieve this outcome, and how is this email applied to my business? That is a fascination. This right here is like saying, tune in to this show about chess, which if you guys haven't seen the Queen's Gambit, that's going to be lost on you. But it's not a fascination. There's no curiosity being piqued here. I'm not interested in a smart moving CRM. I'm not interested in the demo. And then you're you're not giving me anything in return. So you're going to have a perspective. Like, this is a big thing with stuff like this. Like, what is it that you know that they don't know? You can have a point of view. Like the story that I always tell, it's a blatantly obvious one, but it's one everyone knows. I remember very clearly, I don't know if Sarah was born yet, but I had a BlackBerry. It's like a little device with, like, you used to have to type on it, Sarah. Like you didn't have to swipe. I know you guys don't know about these things, but there used to be these.
I had a BlackBerry.
Oh, okay. All right. So you type on these devices, and it was awesome. I mean, it's phenomenal. Until Steve Jobs got up on stage and said this: the problem with smartphones is they're not that smart. It's these keys that don't move. Well, every application wants a different set of keys, so it just doesn't work. Well, it's amazing. It worked before he said that, but that's a point of view. And the same thing with your business. You have to have a point of view, because otherwise they can go to any moving company. Like, what is your take? What is your ramp? Like the U-Haul thing was a great example. Like, that really got my attention. I'm like, easy loading ramp. And it was visual. These guys are, the competitors are up here, break your back, hurt your back. We go down to the ground. So you got to find that angle.
Do you think you would write a response to an inbound query following the same sort of template? Of course, you wouldn't ask, what are you doing to solve X? Because they're coming to you to solve X. So they're like, I don't know, I want you to help me do it. But how would you format that response?
Yeah, so you make a really good point here. So we'll talk about inbound a little bit. So not all inbound leads are created equal. So the first thing we have to do is we have to screen them. Well, let's assume we have a process in place. We're using like chili or chili pepper. We're using something to be able to make sure that we're only looking at leads that are in our ICP, right department, right person, et cetera. We're not looking at like a Gmail address from somebody. Like we're filtering them out. When someone wants a demo, we got to get out of their way. So to set up a demo, please give me a call. No. Click here to book the demo with the AE. Like fast, like within less than 2 minutes, because these leads erode very quickly. We talked a little bit about this with lean data. That's the problem they solve. But you have to have a system in place where you're not even getting involved. It's like when I walk into an Apple store and I'm just browsing versus my hard drive's making a weird noise and I have a keynote. The last thing I want the salesperson to do is this. I want them to say, what do you need? And I'm going to say, get my stuff off this laptop immediately. And they're going to say, okay. And they just move it off. Like, I don't want any friction. There's a lot of friction. So for demo requests, you got to get out of the way and route it, let them book the meeting and get it on the calendar.
Awesome. Okay, let's see if we've got anything else. It does not look like it, so I'm going to stop the share here. But if anything else comes in, guys, feel free to pop it in the chat. Lee says, thank you. He appreciates the feedback. He's been opposing this template for a while, so it's great to see someone agrees. That's good. Good. You've got a real strong backer here for you to argue with whoever else was saying that it was good. So cool. Any other questions, guys, on anything that we've touched here before we wrap this edition of PredRev Live? Let me see if there's anything that's come into the chat here. So there was a question that came in quite a while back now, so I apologize that I didn't answer it sooner, but is this for LinkedIn or any channel, any cold?
Yeah, so the medium is never the issue. Like, all these mediums can be effective or not. What we talked about is really timeless principles. And yes, you can use similar messages in LinkedIn. I really like, for LinkedIn, I like something, I think you guys were actually talking about it, but I'm a big proponent of as well. Like, if I won't do many of these, but I'll pick like 20 a week. And I'll say, like, if it was prospecting Sarah, I'd say, ooh, look, a URL with your name in it. I wonder what that is. And it's like my website / Sarah. Like, it's almost gonna be impossible for her to not click that. Almost. Like, when I wanted to get on the Salesman podcast, this guy Will Barron, I had the hardest time getting on there. Finally made a link. It said, ooh, a URL with your name on it. And it took him to like a page with a video and how I thought I might be able to help add value to his podcast. So I really like that approach, creating like these little custom URLs with people's names in them. Kind of fun.
Awesome. Well, doesn't seem like we've got any more popping up here. So I will say, pop into the Slack still. If you haven't yet, go into the Slack. Anything that you maybe didn't get answered or didn't feel like asking or didn't think of asking, pop it in the Slack. We'll get it to Josh. Follow Josh on LinkedIn for all of these things that we've been talking about today. This is where I found all of this content, is just by following Josh. He posts a bunch of stuff every single day, breaking down emails that he gets, cold calls he gets, and how he would kind of revise them to be more successful. So great resource there. Thank you so much, Josh, for coming on PredRev Live.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. Have a great week.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.